4 rounds remain for all competitors in order to make it to the top 4. Bringing out our competitors, both who qualified through Magic the Gathering Arena top 8 placement. Our first competitor from the Czech Republic, let's welcome Ondrej Straský. Ondrej Straský is rocking out some mono red Esper control and an extremely fashionable scarf. Ondrej's opponent, who again has been really impressing people with interesting decks and great plays. From Italy is Ideas Quicksort. Let's welcome Eduardo Annunziata. Be playing Selesnya, tokens, and mono red aggro, but a very unusual mono red list that is skipping out on Experimental Frenzy. Whoever wins this is 1 round away from the top 4 and from Sunday's competition. Good luck. Have fun. I encourage you to shake hands. Nice, love it. Let's head over to Ailey and Paul.
Thank you very much, Sean. All right, so this is, of course, the do or die for these 2 players. Whoever loses here is unfortunately going home. The other still with the possibility of making that top 4. Paul, what do you think about these matchups? What do you think about these deck lists? Who do you think has the upper hand?
Well, coming into this tournament, I think many people recognize Ondrej Straský as being one of the better players in the world. He, was close to making it into the MPL, and he ground into the top 8 of the Arena ladder, but he has multiple Mythic Championship top 8s under his belt. However, I've been really impressed with Quicksort's play coming into this tournament. The way he navigated through his matches and just being very thoughtful. And you can just tell the gears grinding when he's thinking through his plays. And I think he's also done a really, really good job. Now, looking at the matchups here, Straský bringing mono red and Esper to the table. And I think the important thing here with how the matchups break down, let's take a look here at the mono red deck. And Straský testing with Alexander Hayne coming into this tournament. You see a fairly stuck mono red deck. This is a deck that many of the top pros kind of brought to the tournament, along with kind of the classic combination of mono red aggro and Esper control. Taking a look here, we have a couple of fun-ofs here in Legion Warboss and also Skewer the Critics, but playing the full 4 copies of Experimental Frenzy, and we've seen time and time again just how powerful this card is and how easily it can take over games.
Taking a look now at Strasky's Esper control list. Also, very many cards that we have seen this weekend already. One of the Mastermind's acquisitions to go and dig around in the toolbox for him.
Yeah, but one thing to note from that main deck configuration is that you only see 1 copy of Moment of Craving, so there's a little bit less life gain in Strasky's list. Yeah. His deck is a little bit more tooled to being slightly ahead of other Esper control decks. You saw the 2nd copy of Negate and the 4th copy of Chemister's Insight. That's not going to be especially strong against Quicksort's deck that he brought to the table.
Taking a look at the sideboard there quickly. Nothing too exceptional there.
But mostly, mostly the same thing that we've seen from other Masterminds acquisitions decks.
Now taking a look at the Selesnya tokens, which we haven't seen represented too much here. One or 2, maybe possibly 3 Selesnya token lists. But this deck can go ham pretty quickly if left unchecked.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love playing this deck. This deck just plays one way, put a bunch of tokens onto the battlefield, use Convoke to play out gigantic March of the Multitudes or Venerated Loxodons, and the whole purpose of bringing something like Selesnya tokens is to prey on all the aggressive decks kind of expected in this field, because if you play a bunch of stuff and then you go March of the Multitudes for 5, you've just created this gigantic army of lifelink tokens that a lot of these aggressive decks can't handle.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the head-to-head. Both players starting playing Magic around the same time, but 20 Mythic Championships under Strasky's belts. That's impressive.
Yeah, Straský has basically been qualified for nearly every Mythic Championship since he started playing with multiple top 8s. And as you can see, also a fair number of those Lifetime Arena games because, again, he did qualify for this tournament by securing a top 8 rank within the MTG Arena ladder.
All right, the players are almost ready to get underway. Let's take a look at the opening hands. So, having a look at Quicksort's opening hand, only the 2 lands, but except early migration. I'm not sure this is the ideal start that he would want to see in his opening hand.
Yeah, instead of the Unbreakable formation, you'd like to see another creature just to be able to kind of utilize the Convoke effect on the other cards that you have, cards like Conclave Tribunal, Loxodon, and March of the Multitudes. However, Saproling Migration is, I think, one of the best 2-drop for the deck because it allows you to have the most explosive starts. We saw just how explosive this Selesnya Tokens deck in a previous match where Quicksort quickly dismantled Amazonian with just the best possible start. One drop into Sapperling Migration into Sapperling Migration Loxodon.
Oh, painful indeed. But Quicksort opting to keep this opening hand. And Strasky with the 3 mountains, Shock, Shock, Wizard's Lightning, Experimental Frenzy. So 1 land off being able to play that enchantment.
Yeah, and one of the very key cards, I kind of sound like a broken record at this point, but in the creature matchups, of course, one of the most important cards for the mono red decks is Goblin Chain Whirler.
Yes.
So, you know, you might think, okay, this Selesnya Tokens deck has the option, has the ability to put a lot of 1/1 tokens onto the battlefield, which generally do a good job of blocking a bunch of creatures. But sometimes if you don't have a way to pump all those tokens, a singular Goblin Chain Whirler can completely turn the tides of a match.
So Tide Taker coming down now, taxing Strasky's mana, but getting removed as he was able to pay the additional cost. 3 mountains down now, drawing Marisol the Accord. He found the 3rd land as well, which is a little comforting. You don't want to be sitting there top decking too many creatures.
Yeah, and this is actually quite a nice hand from Strasky. He has a lot of ways to just kill the creatures that Quicksort plays. And then, of course, the powerhouse that we've seen all week, Experimental Frenzy in hand. So I think what Strasky is going to be looking to do here is just use both of the shocks in his hand, get the creatures off the battlefield, and then just slam Experimental Frenzy next turn.
Sounds like a plan. Opting not to use the shock there. But Experimental Frenzy will hit the board.
So keep in mind, Experimental Frenzy makes it so that you can't cast the spells in your hand. However, if your opponents do have an answer to your Frenzy in cards like Conclave Tribunal, your hand still becomes unlocked. So by not using that removal spell, it kind of forces Quicksort to use Conclave Tribunal on the Frenzy, and then Strasky still has access to that shock in hand.
So Conclave Tribunal getting rid of the first Experimental Frenzy, drawing a Goblin Chain Whirler on Strasky's side with Skewer the Critics, Wizard's Lightning, and Shock available to get rid of any creatures that may hit the board. Goblin Chain Whirler come down now, getting rid of that Spirit Token.
Oh, but that was nice. Drawing a land was very, very strong here, as basically Sapperling Migration is effectively a free spell because it costs 2 mana to make 2 tokens. However, you can then tap the 2 tokens that are created to convoke out spells. So for 2 mana, you got to do 2 1/1s, and then Quicksort is able to play a Venerated Loxodon, putting 8 power on the battlefield here on turn 5.
That's pretty good. The Shock might want to get rid of one of those tokens, but deciding against it, at least for now.
Yeah, we've seen before where Venerated Loxodon, just one of the most important cards in the matchup against Mono Red, as it does pump up all your creatures, and simply put, the red deck just has a difficult time dealing with a 4/4 on the battlefield.
Another Forest in hand for Quicksort.
So Quicksort
possibly wanting to get rid of the Goblin Chain Whirler?
Yeah, Quicksort has a couple of options in hand. So the thing that he's thinking about is, I can use Conclave Tribunal on the Chain Whirler and get in for attack. However, it is a little bit concerning because if Strasky top decks something like an Experimental Frenzy, that is one of the most important cards for Strasky to draw to kind of claw back into this game. So I think that's kind of the thought process behind Quicksort. The alternative line of play here is to just play an Unbreakable Formation, but not going to be that effective here because there's only 2 creatures on the battlefield to pump his team.
So you can see Quicksort leaving the mana available to play Unbreakable Formation just in case Strasky decides to go after the Loxodon.
Yeah, and Strasky's hand is very awkward here. He has 2 copies of Wizard's Lightning and Skewer the Critics, and oftentimes you're going to get the discounted rate on the cards. But if you don't, they're kind of just overcosted burn spells you're putting in your deck. If you don't have a Wizard, Wizard's Lightning, 3 mana, 3 damage, not really where you want to be.
Choosing to use the Unbreakable Formation there to keep the Sapperling alive, but now we have a Wizard, which will make the Wizard's Lightning cheaper, and the Skewer the Critics as well. That could possibly get rid of this Venerated Loxodon.
So Strasky can basically, he can play a Lava Runner, attack, then Spectacle out, Skewer the Critics, and Wizard's Lightning if he really wants to get that Loxodon off the battlefield.
How much do you dislike this 4/4? Let's find out, friends. Here we go, getting the Spectacle enabled.
If he does do that, we're basically kind of back to a very neutral board position because now we're left with the battlefield with 2/2 on each side of the battlefield, and it really is just going to come down to top decks. And oftentimes in aggressive decks, this is where the aggressive decks have worse top decks because, of course, their curve is lower. But the mono red deck does play 4 copies of the extremely powerful and potent Experimental Frenzy.
Quicksort pretty pleased there, I think, that those 6 points of damage didn't go to face. Side take coming down now, making it a little more tricky for Strasky to play anything on Quicksort's turn. Top decking land here. He's started to flood a little bit.
Right, and Quicksort's slightly ahead, but keep in mind, Quicksort has so many heavy hitters in his deck. Loxodon would be a fine draw. March of the Multitudes would be fantastic. And of course, if he just draws the Tristani Discordant, it's going to be really hard to win. But that's an Experimental Frenzy off the top from Andre Strasky that could allow him to get back. Let's see how many spells he can string together with the Frenzy.
Only the one for now, but there is a Runaway Steamkin on the top of the library for Strasky. So we could see an explosive next turn.
And that is exactly the card that Strasky needed.
The Plains, however, is not what Quicksort needed. He's in a little bit of an awkward spot here.
And Strasky happily preserving his life total, choosing to take this trade here, giving Quicksort the 1/1 token, but Quicksort flooding out here, a bit too many lands in play, and now we get to see what Experimental Frenzy can do over the course of the next few turns.
All right, let's see. What's your prediction? 5, 3, 2? Let's find out.
Could be anything.
So light up the stage. Digging through. Exiling another light up the stage and a lightning strike.
Oh, and look at this, another very powerful combination. Runaway Steamkin in conjunction with Experimental Frenzy allows you to string together even more spells.
That's a really good draw for Quicksort though. Tristani Discordant, buffing all your creatures by 1 and creating 2 lifelink tokens. In this burn matchup, that's a pretty good card to find.
Oh, absolutely. It is a fantastic draw, but I feel like Quicksort needs to potentially string, go with Tristani Discordant followed by another relevant threat because, of course, Andre Strasky is going to have access to lots of cards here. He has the ability to play light up the stage next turn if for some reasons or somehow he manages to whiff on the Experimental Frenzy.
All right, so the Spirit Token flying in possibly for 2. The Lightning Strike is available to Strasky, and he's going to get rid of that evasive creature, buffing up the Runaway Steamkin in the process.
Yeah, Strasky really wants to get that Tristani Discordant off the battlefield. It wouldn't even shock me if he chooses to use 2 removal spells there to get the Tristani off the battlefield.
It's a good choice of words in a burn matchup. Sorry, I noticed that. I had to.
No worries.
Get to Lava Runner, Runaway Steamkin, light up the stage. And all the extra mana now available off the Runaway Steamkin as well if he chooses to empty it.
And all the Experimental Frenzies here for Andre Strasky. But keep in mind, not only does he have 3 mana available with the 3 mountains in play, he does have the Steamkin as well.
Yeah.
He's got a land here.
Another Viashina Pyromancer, as well as the one that is still in exile.
And honestly, playing that second copy of Frenzy is not that
light
bad.
up the stage as well.
And this is huge because now we have a 4/4.
Now we see an empty again.
And there's a Goblin Chain Whirler with a Lightning Strike. This is the power of Experimental Frenzy. If you untap, bad things happen.
Oh my goodness. Quicksort's probably sitting there saying, please stop, no more.
In his mind, he's thinking of exactly one card at this point, and it is March of the Multitudes. If he can get off a giant March of the Multitudes at the end of turn, he might have a shot.
Yeah. Finding the Step Early Migration, which he can kick to get the additional bodies on the board. Ooh-wee. But if Tristani Discordant dies when the Goblin Chain Whirler hits the board, all these tokens are going to be just flat out dead.
Right, so Quicksort, Quicksort doesn't even want to play it out.
He's like, yeah, no, I will keep my creatures safe. Thank you very much. Next.
And the reason why he just straight up conceded there, even though he had the Tristani for protection, is he already saw the cards that were revealed. And Strasky had not only Goblin Chain Whirler, which, you know, of course, there's a bunch of 2/2 tokens on the battlefield with Tristani, but also revealed was a Lightning Strike. So the combination of Goblin Chain Whirler plus Lightning Strike would have dealt 4 damage to Tristani, and all the other creatures on the battlefield with 1 damage on it would also go along with the Tristani.
Yeah. That is just the nature of the red deck. It's very, very good at getting rid of creatures. So we've seen this weekend.
Right.
All right, so the next matchup we'll be seeing is Esper versus Quicksort's Mono Red, perhaps being able to get some red vengeance. Let's see. Opening hand here for Strasky, finding all the color sources that it needs, as well as Mortify. Cry of the Carnarium will be quite good for a lot of these creatures. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and Chemist's Insight as well, when the 4th land arrives.
Yeah, very nice mix of lands and spells for Strasky. Definitely going to be keeping that hand.
Keeping a 1-lander. Quicksort, you are brave. Good, sir. Fanatical Firebrand swinging in for the damage.
He does have access to multiple one-drops. Not only, he's got multiple firebrands along with the shocks and the skewers, so that's why he chose to keep this hand. I mean, if you just look at his hand, you just count up all the burn, that's still 11 points of damage.
That's still pretty good. Still pretty good. Skewer the Critics now activating. We do have a quick judge call, though, so we will take a quick pause here while we just sort this out. And yeah, we'll be right back in the action.
Yeah, there might be a discussion as to who may or may not have been going first in this particular game. So they're just making sure that they get that correct, of course. In this duo standard best of 3 format, of course, the player who wins the die roll and goes first in game 1, despite the whatever the outcome of the first game, it doesn't matter. The other player will go first.
Yeah. But seems everything is in order, so now we continue with the action. No second mountain just yet. Just Fanatical Firebrands, Shocks, and Skewer the Critics available to Quicksort.
Yeah, and the burn you down strategy, and we saw Andre Strasky actually toning down the amount of life gain that he has in his deck with only the singular copy of Moment of Craving.
Cry of the Carnarium getting rid of the Fanatical Firebrand. Poor little guy. Still no second mana source for Quicksort. He really needs to find that second mountain or he's going to start falling very far behind.
But look at this, Quicksort, if you just count up just the burn in his hand, he's got Lightning Strike, Skewer the Critics, Shock, and Firebrand. That's 9 damage. So Strasky actually needs to find Counterspell or Life Gain to be able to, you know, fight through all of this burn.
Thought Erasure now taking a peek into Quicksort's hand. What do we not want to see? Most likely that Skewer the Critics. He can see now, okay, you're a little bit mana screwed here.
Yeah, he's probably going to look to take one of those burn spells.
Yeah.
He does have the combination of Thought Erasure with a follow-up cast down this turn, so he can get the Gitu Lava Runner off the battlefield.
All right, choosing to get rid of Fanatical Firebrand, just removing the hasty creature from the equation. Cast down, getting rid of that Gitu Lava Runner. But there's another Fanatical Firebrand. They are persistent, these little goblins.
And that's what Hand Disruption can't stop. Cards off the top of your library.
In for another boop. Skewer the Critics still being spectacled. But here's a Vraska's Contempt, which is a life gain source, of course.
Oh, and that was a huge draw.
Pad it, yeah.
Huge, huge draw.
Still no second mountain. Where are they hiding?
Yeah,
I know he's only playing like 18.
Right.
Quicksort
opting to play less mountains because he doesn't play Experimental Frenzy. His curve stops at 3 with the Chain Whirlers and the risk factors. So that's why he kind of is cheating on lands, is just playing the 18. But he is definitely being punished in this game because he hasn't been able to find that second mana source.
No plays currently for Quicksort.
And this game is getting close to being over.
He's thinking about it.
He's thought about it, but at the same time, we're playing for a slot into the top 4 of the Mythic Invitational, where first place is $250,000. Until it's definitively over, you need to play it out.
Yeah, you need to just hang out. You might be okay. You never know. Weirder things have happened in Magic, so just pray for another mountain.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, Strasky doesn't have any counter magic or life gain in hand.
Oh, but Quicksort. Not liking this mana screw. Tough hand to keep. Tough break for him, but Andre Strasky stays alive in this tournament. Not through just yet. One more game to go.
Right, but, and you know, that is sometimes the nature of kind of what you need to do when you're playing a deck with such a low mana curve. The deck is full of 1-drops, and you know, I think Quicksort, he's played thousands and thousands of games, and you know, for him, this was probably a pretty easy keep for him because he goes, if you just run the numbers, it is pretty likely to find that second mana source within the first 4 or 5 turns of the game, right? And even if he didn't, he had a few plays turn 1, and if he found a second land at any point, I want to say between turn 4 and 5, he would have had a very good shot of winning that game.
Yeah, he was doing so much damage to Strasky, and it's unfortunate that he couldn't find the second mana source, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Yeah,
definitely. And on Strasky's side, however, you know, you really, again, I'm just, a card of the tournament so far has to be that Experimental Frenzy. We've just seen the most dramatic moments happen all on the back of that card. We've seen timely Goblin Chain Whirlers, and we've seen just, you know, players be able to just string together 4, 5, 6 spells in a row with this card. And I mean, that's part of the reason why a lot of these players chose to bring Mono Red, because not only does it have that early aggression that can rival any of the aggressive decks in the format, it's got staying power in the Experimental Frenzy.
So where we see that card advantage is key in most matchups, Esper controls like, oh, I just have an entire full hand all the time. Well, Mono Red's just like, hold my beer. Check out my experimental frenzy. Let's go hear from our winner, Becca. Sorry, take it away.